And I can imagine, and I think this is true of this vein of judgmentalism, is well, I didn't do what she did, so I can point out. And I think that's, if you think about, that's the core of judgment, isn't it? Like, I'm going to bring to Jesus this person who culturally in that time we all identified as a bad person involved in a bad choice, and we want Jesus to condemn her, so that we can feel better about how we also condemn other women like her, and we can feel good about ourselves because we don't do that. But then when he cast the net really wider and said, oh, okay, well, everybody without sin, you go ahead and pick up the rocks.
You just heard the voice of Reverend Doug Meyer, one of our associate pastors here at Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church in Flower Mounds, and you're listening to the Life Plus God podcast.
I wonder what a podcat looks like.
And you're listening to the Life Plus God podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Robinson. I am so glad that you're with us today. Doug, thank you so much for being here. And man, this question, why do Christians seem so judgmental?
Yeah.
And I think that this is something that each of us have experienced. Either we've experienced judgment personally, or we've seen other people being judgmental, or we've participated in judgmental conversations.
Yep, all of the above.
We've seen people judging Christians from the outside. There's so much judgment. Everywhere.
Yep.
But somehow, Christians seem to be the best at it. Or there's the perception that Christians are more judgmental than most.
That's interesting, because I guess, so I are one, right? I'm a Christian. I'm a pastor. A lot of my coming and going and doing of life is with churchy people. So it's hard for me to compare, not being in a bunch of other cool environments, which I need to pursue. But church people are we're good at judging. We're good judgers. We're big judgers. That's a big thing. And I think your question was, why do Christians seem so judgmental? Well, they seem that way because they are. I mean, it's not a false perception.
But I guess what I'm wondering, is this something? So, of course, ingrained in our humanity, there is judgment, right? Mm-hmm. Because some of it's a survival tactic.
Exactly.
Of like, you've got to judge, is this safe or not? Should I be around this person or not? Should I be in this environment or not? And there's judgment needed in that. But there seems to be a unique brand of judgment from Christianity. And I kind of want to dive into that a little bit today and see if we can unpack, where does this come from?
And just to jump into that for a minute, I think it comes from countless areas. I think we even just absorb it in the air sometime. And a lot of it just continues to go back up, your life food chain of environment, parents, their judge, all of that. And then every turn puts you in contact with different people and different tribes. And each of those have their judgmental qualities, or their litmus test, if you would, which is, judgment. And at its most fundamental level, you're right. I think it's from our ancestors, we had to judge an environment for its safety, its ability to provide food and water, sustenance. And so then that grew. And so we learned how to make assumptions based on previous experiences. If, let's just say, we were cavemen and women back in the day, and we had had a bad experience with the cave people on the other side of the mountain, we would assign that probably all of those people are bad people.
Yeah, stay away from them.
Stay away
just
from
in case
those.
They're
because
all
that one
way.
day, remember, they wanted to steal our fish or whatever. And so you just extrapolate that out 1,000 different ways, and it's just become, it seems like, it's a part of our life now. I don't even know if it's lifestyle.
Yeah.
And maybe you could say that we are in a heightened area right now, because as people fracture from each other, some of that basis for doing that is based on a judgment. Mm-hmm. Some might be accurate, some of it's probably wildly inaccurate. So we do it. I did it twice this week. I was in a restaurant with a friend in a really rough part of Fort Worth, and I said, just by looking around, do you think we're safe here? And I doubt that the other patrons in that restaurant saw it through my eyes, which is, 65-year-old, pasty white, privileged man who thought, Red Robin, is this place safe to be? And I didn't know. I based that on nothing except the environment and the people who came in and out of the restaurant.
Mm. Well, and through Christianity specifically, it feels like where a lot of this comes from is this idea that there is a right way and a wrong way to live. And I feel like that's something that we've just completely misconstrued from scripture of like Jesus trying to teach the way and the way of being in the world in order to bring God's kingdom here on earth. And we took that and we said, okay, there's a good way to live and there's a bad way and a sinful way to live. And if you're not living the good way, then you're living the bad way and we got to change your ways. And
Right.
and that is just fertile ground for judgment and condemnation. Where did we miss the mark on like what that teaching of the way was supposed to be?
Well, I think humanity is vulnerable anytime somebody is trying to draw a distinction between anything. And we, if there are words used or qualities lifted up or qualities, looked down upon, we take that in our little collection of, let's just keep using the safety thing. Is this person safe to be around? And in the language of Christianity, is this person a good person to be around? Safe to be around? Does that mean they extol the same virtues I extol? And if
we use things like, are they a good influence?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we assign that word good based on preferences and experiences and things that don't necessarily have anything to do with good or bad or risky or not risky. It's just different.
Yeah.
Because I think at the end of the day, we're probably just afraid of different. And we just wallow around our own ignorance or something.
When was the last time you experienced being the recipient of judgment?
Oh, yeah. Ooh. Golly. I don't think when have I been judged?
To your face. I'm guessing we're all judged behind our backs every day.
I got this little report about, I'm going to make up 6 months ago that it was kind of an evaluation that we pastors have to have by governing bodies here at the church. And one of the bullet notes said that Pastor Doug needs to work on his rambling and unorganized sermons. And I just took that like, what? Huh?
Why don't you get up there?
Why don't you try it, lady? And so, that was a judgment of, I'll just call it a product I produce.
Yeah.
Right? But as me being just Doug Meyer, I don't know. I don't know that a lot of people say to my face maybe what they think about me or not.
Has there been an instant where you felt judgment? They didn't necessarily say anything, but you were like, this person doesn't like my vibe.
Wow, those are good questions because, I'm a dysfunctional people pleaser. So everything I'm going to do in relationship to other people is bend to them and their perception of me for them to like me. So, I wouldn't be around people who didn't like me. I wouldn't. Why do that anyway? Life's too short. So there are, I am sure, but I really don't have an adequate answer to people who give off that kind of vibe. And because more than likely, if I even suspected you didn't, I would avoid you. Why? Have you heard things?
No, I'm just sitting here thinking about
like
like just last week I was experiencing judgment from people, and maybe it's just because I'm a more brash person, I guess. I tend to rub people the wrong way. I think that sometimes my living out of Christianity looks different from a lot of people. I curse like a sailor. I have tattoos. I'm body positive. I'm sex positive. Like I'm very embracing of the world. I'm, an LGBTQ ally. I'm a feminist. I'm like a lot of people's worst nightmare is what I am, all rolled up into one. And just last week I was meeting someone for the first time at a lunch, and was sitting there, and it was a group of couples gathering, and we were talking about how each of us met, and I was sharing how my partner and I met, and it's not a real clean cut story. It's we were all we were drinking, we were all sorts of stuff.
Oh, those were the best stories come out.
And I just felt this I saw this person sitting next to me literally look down and start shaking their head.
The head shake of
at
shame.
The way that I live my life.
No way.
And I know that this person is very Christian, very devout, but kind of more. They fit more into the stereotype of what a Christian is or should be than I do.
So they put the mantle of judgment on themselves, right?
Yes, and I don't think that it was intentional.
They give themselves permission to judge you.
I don't think this person was doing it intentionally. I don't think that, but I know, I'm like, man, this person does not like what they're hearing out of me, but I'm not going to adapt is the difference. I just am like, okay, take it or leave it. This is who I am.
Well, okay, two quick little things before I forget them. So that just shows you how, it's like food, air, oxygen, water, judgment. People aren't trying to. Whatever messages you were sending out went up in and through their filtration system, and it just triggered their auto response of shaking their head back and forth. No, they just, everything inside them was saying, red alert, red alert, red alert. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So I'm just perplexed by your question a minute ago. Who doesn't like? See what I heard? I was about to say it out loud. Who doesn't like me?
Oh.
Not who judged me, but my little brain, the dysfunctional part of my people pleaser brain, heard, who has told you they don't like you?
Oh.
No, that's fine, because that's
Doug.
just, I know. Everybody feels sorry for Pastor Doug, right? No, that's just an illustration of, I think one of the things as a people pleaser I have to work through is, almost like I need to write it on my bathroom mirror. It is okay that everybody doesn't like you.
Yeah.
Because as an accommodator in the midst of that dysfunction, you kind of blow in the wind. And it's...
So you'll adjust the way that you speak or the way you present yourself based on the social cues that the other person is giving you.
Absolutely.
And I don't.
Except for radically stupid, just off the fringe folks. No, I won't go that far. And what I'll do, you maybe have noticed me do this, I will not quite shut down, but if you're just irrationally stupid or whatever, I don't have the mental capacity for it, I'll just disengage.
Yeah.
I'll just whatever.
See, it sounds like we approach judgment in two opposite ways. Like, go figure, another thing on the list of ways that we're opposites. But
it's wonderful.
It sounds like your approach to judgment is shielding yourself from it. Of I'm going to change the way I function in the world so that people won't be judgmental of me and I won't have to face the judgment of others. And I'm almost the exact opposite of I'm going to put it all out there, see who judges me, and then I know who not to invest in.
Yeah. Well, see, so
I'm also being judgmental in that act as well.
That's true. And you're limiting who and how you're around people. So again, when I'm wearing my, which is most all the time, my pastor Superman robe, I think everybody's supposed to like me because I'm supposed to like everybody. And, the word every plays a big part of that. So it is a challenge, I think, for pastors to be their most authentic selves in all environments and not amend to the judgment of others.
Mm.
That's lesson number 1 from Pastor Doug. Thank you for that today.
Well, let's get into your ministry a little bit.
Uh-oh.
So, have you encountered instances in your ministry where people have been judgmental and you had to address it in some way?
Yeah, I think in the early days, so most all of my ministry is very Christian friendly in pastoral care. It's hard to find a fault in loving people, caring for people, going to the hospital, doing funerals, and all that kind of stuff. But when and as I grew more comfortable embracing what we will, I don't call them on the edge anymore, but the church might say edgy people. Anybody in recovery, the church as a big question mark over their heads about, are they okay to be around? Are they good? That has lessened here, or else I just don't hear it as much. But there were assumptions made and generalizations made about drug addicts, alcoholic, sex addicts, you name blank addict. And the assumption was that, hide your kids. It's contagious. They're not good for you. They're, sleeping in a ditch. Any negative connotation that you might have or is kind of just, I feel like they're beginning to culturally fade away some as people learn more about addiction. But there was some anxiety about people using the building and generalizations. One lady said to me, well, if you're going to have that at the church, they can't smoke in the building, right? I'm like, well, I don't. Okay.
Can you smoke in any building?
I don't. Well, because
at the time maybe people could.
No, not even then.
Okay.
But her generalization was all alcoholics smoke. Mm. And I mean, that was such a minor thing, but people make assumptions and attach that to an addict, and most often it's probably based out of their own personal experience. She probably had a uncle, aunt or an uncle who was alcoholic and sat out on the back porch and drank, Miller Lite and smoked cigarettes all day. So she just assumed everybody's a, beer drinker and a smoker. So, but, beyond that, no, I haven't had a whole lot of other, because like I said, my lane is pretty safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Caring for the sick and dying is not.
It's pretty hard to knock on that.
Well, I know, you mentioned at the very top, you've faced judgment on the way that you preach or I think oftentimes it's maybe more the way you do something than what you're actually doing.
Yeah. And I get that. Over the years here at Trietsch, I have become more inclusive in my language, inclusive in, not inclusive, but not exclusive of labeling good, bad, wrong behavior. And there is a population that still prefers the preacher, whoever it is, to point out the error of people's ways and to have more of a declaring, like, that's a bad lifestyle or that's a bad this, or, just judgmental kind of qualities. When, like, if I were to have any kind of example of that now, it would be how to use an experience as a life lesson, and lay that template over it versus assign a judgment and go, you're a bad person if you do that. Yeah. So.
Well, it's like only God can judge, but the pastors are the one delivering the message of God's judgment. I don't know. Like, what is why do people want to hear that? Why are there people who want to hear that judgment and condemnation from the pulpit like that, and to do the finger pointing? Where does that come from? Because that feels counter scriptural to me.
It does, and it is counter-scriptural, but I think that we're very basic when it comes down to it, and we want to know where we are in the equation of good and bad.
It's like why people watch reality TV so that I can feel good about my life because at least I'm not as bad as that person.
At least I'm not doing that thing that the pastor just reminded us all
is a sin,
which is a bad thing. And I can look at my kids and say, don't do that. Your mommy, daddy don't do that, or whomever doesn't do that. And so it's we all have little baby Christian egos, and we like to be set apart from. And so if we can say, oh, look how good we are, we're not one of them, or we don't do that behavior.
It's like flaunting how, loving and like how good we are, but then that kind of strikes through the purpose of.
Well, it's just all a bunch of BS, really, because, that's all false. No matter how the pastor is saying that and how the person is judging it, that at least I'm not as bad as him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, that's great that you don't have that same quality, but let's look at the qualities you do have. And so I think it's a very slippery slope when a preacher starts getting into that, to think that you are exempt from any of the finger pointing that the pastor might point out. I mean, come on. We all have major flaws, and we all, in our humanity, just have made, bizarre decisions and choices and thoughts. And so to think you're somehow wonderfully immune because of this veil of faith or Christianity wrapped around you, why do we do that? Why do we like to be, on one hand, I think we like when we are not that person. If he's our little ego, oh, look how good a Christian I am. Look how nice I am because I don't do those things that were being, held up as negative virtues. But why at the end of the day is that still such an inherent part of who people are as Christ followers? Because, I scribbled down some of the, like in Romans 3, some scriptures, everyone has sinned when we all fall short. So there's a whole nother one. I don't know if you're ready to go down the sin road yet or not.
I love the sin road.
All right. Well, so, okay, that's a word that is used in different contexts to identify a behavior that is not within the primary teachings of the Christian faith. And it has been used, it has been weaponized, it has been labelized, it has been, cast out as this power word to convict people, condemn people.
Scare
you are a sinner. And in reality, if you use the basic definition of living or making a choice that is outside of what is presented as the healthiest way to be a Christ follower, then we all do that all the time, in all the ways, every day. But it's weaponized as a part of this judgmental mindset that you're talking about.
Yeah. I feel like for the accountability piece of it, like there is a place in our Christian walk for accountability for each other. But I think that the crux of it is relationship of like, you should not be trying to hold people accountable who you are not in personal relationship with and may not even be Christ followers. Like, how dare you try to hold people to a standard that they have not agreed to and you don't even know them?
Yeah, no, I think for accountability to work, and we talk about that a lot in recovery circles, like it has to be a mutual decision. I have to allow you or invite you into an accountable relationship.
Yeah. And
so when I say that, I mean it goes both ways. I'm not on a platform higher than you looking down and saying, oh, by the way, today's accountability day and I'm going to judge you. It just means that we're going to be our most honest, authentic selves to each other and be receptive when I might notice something that you're just not even noticing. Hey, did you realize, Pastor Doug, that you get anxious and scary around people who are different than you? Is that something you want to talk about or wonder how that came to be? But I think perhaps there is this sense that accountability is equal to judgment, which is equal to sentencing.
Well, because I think accountability has been used as an excuse to judge.
Yeah.
Of like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, hey, just trying to hold you accountable. And it's like, I didn't ask you. I didn't ask
Who
you
are
to
you
do.
to
I
hold me
didn't agree to
accountable?
that.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And maybe I'm off, but I think that's where accountability is a two-way street, and it has to be done in mutually respectful relationships. Otherwise, and I'm like, if you are trying to hold me accountable, it assumes I know you're doing that. B, that I care that you're doing that. C, that I'm going to alter some behavior because you have pointed that behavior out. When in reality, I might not really even give a rat's ass about anything you say or hold against me, because I don't hold that decision as of the same value. It doesn't mean anything to me. So if you're holding me accountable about something you treasure and cherish, but I don't care, well, that's not accountability. That's judgment.
Yeah. Well, have you ever found yourself personally, I mean, I think you've already admitted to it a few times, but have you found yourself personally struggling with judgmental thoughts or attitudes? And
oh, gosh, yeah. Man,
what are they, and how do you work through them?
It's a big secret. I can't tell you.
Okay. Well, how do you work through them if you don't want to say what they are?
No, I think I'm okay. So attitudes. Let me see. Man, I got a bunch.
I'll share too, so don't feel like this is going to be a one-way street here.
I don't mind. So I'm winky about homeless people at an intersection, and I will judge them and decide the risk, and I will automatically lock my door. Now, I can talk myself into that just being common sense and safe, but it is based. I've never been accosted by a homeless person at an intersection. All I've ever done is wave and occasionally give them a, what are the bags called that we give out to people?
The blessing bags.
Blessing bag, thank you.
Yeah.
Or a little bit of, some paper money. But they're still in my head, kind of this subconscious, be careful, lock your doors. Well, that's silly. I mean, I am, like I said in the restaurant the other day over in Fort Worth, I judged people based on their skin color, income level, and just some moderately erratic behavior, which, big deal with that. I tend to judge judgmental people.
Yeah, that's on my list.
Yeah, I love doing that one. People who will say a statement and it's just so out of my wheelhouse that I will just, like I said earlier, how I will retract from them. I'm just like, life's too short. I'll just kind of go, no, or on occasion I will blurt out something, but most often I will do like your friend did. I'll just do like the head shake of shame. And just like, you poor thing, you're so pitiful because I'm so much better than you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one. I think I did that even today at lunch for somebody. I don't know.
Yeah.
So give me one or two of yours.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, I mean, number one for me, I feel like this whole podcast is based on it. I'm judgmental of Christians. And specifically white Christians. I'm very, very judgmental because I'm like, you got all the power. You can change things and you're not. And it's not just the individual people, it's the systems, it's the organization of the church. And I'm like, man, we could make real change here and it's not happening. And I get really judgmental about it and how money is being spent and who's giving and who's not giving and how many people do we have coming to this church who don't give $1 and, all of this stuff who don't contribute. And I just get into this like
tizzy it up
snowball of negative attitudes towards Christians. And I am, when someone is very outspoken about their faith, I pay closer attention to how they live, which, I mean, to an extent, I guess we're called to that of like, if you're going to call yourself a Christian, you better walk the walk, But I think I'm sometimes looking to be disappointed. Like I'm looking for the ways that people are falling short, because if you look for it, you're going to find it.
Just open your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, for me, I mean, that's my number one.
I am critical of people who embrace a certain political party and then exhort behaviors and as a part of that, they're kind of Christian nationalism and Jesus and Bible and all that and the flag all wrapped into one. And so on one hand, they are putting out their faith, and then the other hand, they're supporting either policy or behaviors that seem contrary to what is affirmed in the Bible or by other Christians as caring, loving, kind, so forth and so on. And so I judge them all over the place.
But here I am. And so I'm like, okay, well, I might have just offended, 100% of our listenership who are like, oh, well, I'm a Christian. I'm not any better because am I serving more than anyone else? No, probably less. Am I giving more than anyone else? No, probably less. Am I really walking the walk? Probably not. Absolutely not. Let's be honest. Absolutely not. But I have in my head, these judgments about if you're going to be this type of person and claim these beliefs, then.
So would you rather just not know their beliefs? Does it kind of tick you off that they claim that and somehow they're putting that out there in the world to say that they're better than you? Or, what is it that kind of pokes you in the...
Well, one of the things that I have recognized about myself recently that I really need to work on, and part of it is being an 8 on the Enneagram, I think that I become addicted to anger.
Ooh.
I like being angry.
Yeah.
It makes me feel strong. It makes me feel powerful. And when I'm worked up about something, I'm unstoppable. And my mind clears and I'm very, I can communicate very easily and I'm concise and I'm the type of person who I say exactly what I want to say in any argument.
Yeah.
And I don't walk away being like, oh, I wish I had said, this, or this.
Right.
And so anger for me can be fueling. And I think that there are positive aspects of that if it's righteous anger, but there are negative aspects of it if it is just anger to be angry. And I think that I am in this constant state of what's the next thing I'm going to be mad about?
Bring it.
Yeah.
I wonder, and I'm sure it wouldn't take very long at all to research this, but what that anger releases within you. I don't think it's dopamine, but I'm way out of my field of knowledge right now. But there is something that then is working for the rest of your system to be on.
Yeah.
It's whatever natural hormone or whatever is released and you're getting a rush of that.
I think it comes back down to the judgment of it is, sometimes it feels good to be indignant. To feel like I've got the upper hand, I know the right way to do things, and you're doing it. And it's back to that reality show, habit of I'm doing better than these people, Do
you think any of that, we're going to play psychology here for a minute, y'all, results or is a consequence of some of the times that you were a victim by some other person's activities or things beyond your control?
For sure. I think absolutely.
So it gives you power.
Yeah. Here's my childhood wound. One of my childhood wounds that made me who I am today. I don't know if I've ever shared this before on the podcast. I've shared it before in life. But when I was 10 years old, my mom, my sister, and I went to a movie theater. They used to do 50-cent Tuesdays at the Dollar Movie Theater. So we went out for 50-cent Tuesday, and this was before the internet was a big thing. So they weren't selling movie tickets online. So you had to go to the box office, and then there was the snack line. You couldn't order anything in advance. And so when we got there, my mom said, okay, Alyssa, why don't you go stand in the concession line? Stephanie and I will go to the box office, get the tickets, and then we'll meet up with you. Here's what we want. And so I was standing in line. I was 10 years old, running the orders through my head. My mom had the money.
Don't want to mess this
I know.
up.
It's one of those things where it's you're waiting in line in the checkout and your mom's not there yet. And she has the money. And what am I going to do?
Oh my God, what's going to happen?
No. So I was standing in line and she joined up with us. And the guy behind us in line, I'll remember his face until the day I die. He was this bald, muscly man wearing an Ed Hardy t-shirt and bedazzled jeans, had a little blonde-haired, stereotypical trophy partner, wife, whatever, on his arm. And he was like, excuse me, no cutting. And my mom said, oh, well, this is my daughter. I'm going to pay for the snacks. And he was like, I don't care. You don't get to cut in line. And she was like, I'm not cutting in line. My daughter knew our orders. She was going to get, like, it's not going to take any longer than it was going to take before, you know? And the guy was like, well, how do I even know that she's your daughter? And this was back when you carried pictures of your kids in your wallet. Yep. And my mom was like engaging with this guy and was like, I mean, here's a picture of her in my wallet. She looks exactly like me. And I was just standing there frozen. I didn't know what to do, what to say. This guy was so scary. And then after she showed the picture of me, he said, well, maybe you should have gotten an abortion.
No way.
Yes. And he was screaming at her in the snack line. There were a ton of, it was 50 Cent Tuesday. It was crowded.
Packed, yeah.
People everywhere. Nobody stepped in and said a thing. My mom turned to me and my sister, and you can ask Stephanie. She remembers this vividly as well. It was a defining moment in her life and probably took her in a different direction personality-wise. But my mom turned to both of us and said, hey, why don't you two go sit down in the theater and I'll catch up with you. And I don't know what happened after that. And I've asked my mom about it, and she doesn't even remember the incident.
Oh my gosh!
I'm like, what?
Well, how do you not
remember
that?
it?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I don't remember. I guess I might have called a manager over to help or something. But I remember my face was bright red, and I was sitting in that dark theater because the previews had already started. I was with my sister. My mom was out there, and I was crying. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm never going to let that happen again. Like, nobody's going to treat my family like that again and me not do something and me not say something. Wow. And so that took me down this path of like being, I'm outspoken. I don't, and I think that's why I'm so judgmental of a certain type of person. Is like, I do not stand for bullies. You will not bully the people I love. You know,
well, and so all
certain
the associated,
people,
actions, activities, vocabulary, words, body movement, whatever. Yeah.
I'm like, you will not judge the people I love and not hear about it from me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not going to dim my light because you don't like it. Yeah. You know, and so it kind of like, sense. And that's just one. I don't think that that's the hinge, but I think that that's one of many stories that kind of built me into the little, you know, helped me put on all of the armor that I wear today, going out into the world. But like that had such an impact on me, and I'm like, I'm anti-bully. I don't like if somebody is being judgmental or pushing someone around, I'm the first person to step in and say, hey, cut that out, you know?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes, and I think that developed my anger as well. And I think it was that I overcorrected at some point. Yeah. And as a result, I'm not empathetic to people. I don't have you talk all the time about what else could be true. And for certain people, that does not come to mind for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way it makes sense because the thing that I make up that comes to mind for you first is safety, control, stand your ground kind of mindset. And those, I think it takes a while for it to filter down to empathy because that's not what matters in that self-protection moment. It's actually almost opposite. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, I'm not going to be empathetic to that person unless or until I know that they're not a threat.
Yeah. And I'm judgmental of men. I am so judgmental of men. And that's a big subset of the population, Doug.
Well, there are quite a few of us.
But I think that's part of it is like, if I perceive that you have any power over me in any way, whether it be societally, whether it be culturally, physically, whatever,
right.
I'm going to stand my ground. You are not going to see me budge an inch.
If that man is in a posture or a position to do that.
Yeah. And I prejudge and I'm like, okay, this is going to be most likely I'm in contact with a toxic man.
Yep.
Unless he proves me wrong.
Yep. Yeah. Well, seeing that right there, I mean, I think
So
everybody
now
does that.
everybody's like, oh my gosh, Alyssa.
Y'all are just
You got a
seeing-
lot of work to do. I know. I'm aware.
We all do. But I love that illustration, not for you, but because it just highlights that from the very beginnings of our interactions with others, out of our little nests, right? We began to assign good, bad, right, wrong, safe, not safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have a trauma experience in the middle of that either underscores what you already kind of thought or it creates a whole new thing. And man, you just plant your flag in it and, you go on. I think.
And of course, my sister's the complete opposite of me. She is like loving, empathetic. Like if she's judgmental, you would never know it because she'd never say anything. She's the kind.
Yeah, really did kind of. I mean, and maybe you were already different from that moment, but you did like one went left, one went right.
Yeah,
way different.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can kind of remember is a generalized trait. Is I was always kind of scared and quiet, kind of a scaredy cat kind of little boy, and kept to myself a lot and was probably called by like teachers shy or introverted. A couple of occasions in junior high and high school to have been bullied, and throughout life then, I'm trying to think if this is actually true. Like, I work harder to reach out to that person who I know who's standing over there all by themselves, worried or afraid of speaking to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And, but that has been slow in coming because it's still, there's a lot of judgment that men place on each other. And it's based on athleticism and size and looks and just this whole, our litmus test.
Are you alpha? Yeah.
I don't think I'm very alpha.
No, I wasn't asking you. I was saying that's one of the judgments that people.
You mean it's not obvious, man? See, my alpha male voice even changes. Like, oh, yeah. Monosyllabic.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I think it's funny because a lot of our judgments come from childhood of like what we were raised to believe or a trauma experience. And a lot of the work that we have to do is going back and undoing that judgment that was instilled in us from such a young age. And so I just think about that moment in the movie theater and who I have become since then of like just putting on all of this armor to make sure that'll never happen again and nobody can mess with me.
Like a good old psychologist or therapist would probably have fun identifying that was like a pivotal trauma because it checked all the boxes. But male, threat, self-protection, safety, all of these core things that, and somewhere in there, the whole male-female thing got inserted in all of that madness.
Well, and so I spend a lot of time figuring out, okay, what does that mean for who I am today? When really, I feel like the work that that has been put in me to do is maybe what I should be doing is going and sitting with that crying little girl in the movie theater and seeing what's she thinking, what's she feeling like. And be in that intimate, vulnerable moment with my childhood self and nurture myself and take care of myself and give myself what I needed in that moment, which was not to sit in the dark crying by myself.
Yeah, no, probably not. So there are tons of great therapists out there, Alyssa.
I know. So we are talking about judgment today. We're not talking about Alyssa's trauma, but I do think that a lot of it, the judgment springs from that hardening that we do over time to protect ourselves.
Yeah. And, man, have fun with that. No, I think that's so one of the things, just to kind of be, Pastor Doug on the radio, I looked up some scriptures, and I think the one that I have scribbled down here in front of me is, I really think that we should all study it over and over again. It's in John 8, where a group of people brought a woman who'd been caught in the act of adultery to Jesus to be judged. And so just the layers of that story and his rebuttal, I guess you would say at the end about, those of you without sin, go ahead and cast the first stone. Man, I think that, why'd they bring the woman and not the man? Mm-hmm. Why not both? I can hear in some of the...
But that's where my judgment plays into reading scripture as well.
Yeah.
Like that's... Because I have that same question and I'm like, here we go again, you know?
Probably a man wrote that down and didn't... Yeah. And I can imagine, and I think this is true of this vein of judgmentalism, is, I didn't do what she did. Mm-hmm. So I can point out, and I think that's, if you think about it, that's the core of judgment, isn't it? Like, I'm going to bring to Jesus this person who culturally in that time we all identified as a bad person, involved in a bad choice. And we want Jesus to condemn her so that we can feel better about how we also condemn other women like her, and we can feel good about ourselves because we don't do that. Mm-hmm. But then when he cast the net really wider and said, oh, okay, well, everybody without sin, you go ahead and pick up the rocks. And pretty soon, I think the story goes that the crowd dispersed or something like that. But I think...
I love that it specifies the first person to drop their rock was the oldest.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that us in a nutshell?
Yeah. It's like the oldest person there was like, well, I know I got a life full of
well, and that's
sin.
Within the organization of the church, I think we still bring people and put in front of Jesus and say, look, condemn this. Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I both know tons of behaviors that people are involved in as a part of their identity, and we want Jesus to condemn them. Yeah.
Are you going to let this happen? What's your stand? Take a stand as a church. What are you going to do? Are you going to let these people in?
Because they're sinners.
Yeah.
It says right here they're sinners.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we want. It's kind of like we want like layers of sinnerness. Like there's got to be like a top 5 that what we can just judge without even thinking about it, right? Mm-hmm. And then once it gets down in the weeds a little bit, and maybe we know we did that, or we know somebody. Well, they're not really that bad a person. We want that to kind of just go the way. That's crazy thinking, and it just always comes back to like in Matthew 7: "Judge not, lest ye be judged," and love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so there's 2 veins of communication going on. Jesus, judge these people, judge these people. And Jesus' response is, love these people.
Let me ask, so we talked about the line between judgment and accountability. What about the line between non-judgment and complacency? Of so non-judgmental that you're not calling out bad behavior, that you're not taking a stand for the marginalized, for the people who are hurting, because you're like, well, I can't judge the way other people choose to live their lives, even if the other people choose to live in a hateful manner.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is, by not judging, we are kind of turning our face away from victimization or other things that are happening to a people or population or whomever, because, I can't judge. I don't know all the circumstances or whatever, but we see people, I don't really understand all the nuances of this stupid war over in Gaza, but I do know starving, neglected families and children when I see them. And so help me understand the righteousness somewhere in there. And so I'm really quick there to judge people who are so pro-Israel that somehow they turn a blind eye to the consequences of their government's bombing. Well, no, wait a minute. Isn't somewhere in there, isn't something wrong happening? And you can take that and find layers far on the other side of the ocean, or you can find them within 5 miles of this church, where people are being victimized by other people's actions or inactions, and either individually, collectively, or the church at times is like, well, we just can't get involved in that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think we should. that goes on.
But so is getting involved a form of judgment? Like that's because we're judging whether or not.
Right.
I don't know. It's complicated for me.
But see, I think you and I would both like that kind of judgment.
I know, but that's our biases. So someone who has the opposite views of us are like, well, convenient, isn't it? That your form of judgment is the right form,
Yeah, and you know what? I'm willing to take that, I guess. But so just think back to the very beginnings of conversations about race in America. Mm-hmm. There were probably what people thought to be really good people. Like the silly thing Trump said, there are good people on both sides of the argument. Well, there might be good people, but I assign that choosing to discriminate a person because of the color of their skin makes it hard for me to use that word good in relationship to choices you're making. I still have to assign that you're a beloved child of God, but the choices and the way that you are living out even wrapping it in faith, they do not seem congruent at all with what I read in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And you just pick that, and you can lay it, I think, against every ism that we see in our world. That we really want the world to be simple. We want it to be right and wrong, good and bad. And it's not. It's hard and it's messy and it's complicated. And I think the best thing the church could probably admit to is, man, we get it wrong a whole lot of the time. And that we fall into the victimizing, judging trap all the time.
Yeah.
I got to read you this other little quote I came upon because I got it. You know me. I did my homework. So, do you know the name Helen Prigene?
No.
You will in a minute. So she's the Catholic sister nun who is very involved in death penalty cases in Louisiana. She goes and sits with and is protest against the death penalty, and really, in words and actions, models unconditional love. And she said the phrase, "A person is more than the worst thing they have ever done." Because she has had hurled at her judgments about, why do you befriend a murderer or a rapist, or pick any collection of the bad people you want. And she goes and befriends them and brings food and sits with. And I don't think that she necessarily says, I'm only going to do it if you become this Christian. She does it because of just her identity and who she is. But I just love that phrase. A person is more than the worst thing they have ever done. Mm-hmm. And see, that's counter to judgmentalism. We say you are about the same as the worst thing you've ever done.
Yeah. Well, I guess where I like the sound of that.
Okay.
Obviously, as a Christ follower, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to be judged for the worst thing I've ever done.
Okay.
But there's also perpetually doing that thing where, like, it's one thing to abuse a child. It's another thing which is abhorrent. And it's a totally different thing to continually abuse a child for and through their adult. I mean, there's
eons
and then
long
for me, I'm like, that
and,
does kind of define you.
Yeah.
Like if you just go from child to child, victimizing children in perpetuity for your entire life, like, yeah, I am going to define you by that.
Yeah.
And that is judgmental on my part, I guess. But like you said, I'm fine with that, but it's, we want to put it in a package in a nice little bow, and everything is so situational.
It is, but I think in theory it's not. Like, I think if Jesus was here...
In the Jesus theory, it's not. Yeah.
Right, but I think it goes back into when either you or I said it, and it was brilliant, whoever said it. But how we still just continually are working on a collection of good and bad. Mm-hmm. And how close can I come in not judging a bad person? How much grace can I extend to a child molester? Can I? Can I not? Ooh, I don't know. Can I? I can say their name. I can maybe not wish them immediate death. I think we live on this continuum, and all the time we are instantly going through. Yeah, good. Yeah, bad. Safe, not safe, and we have this whole big stack over here to the far right of, to be determined.
Yeah,
and that we're going to leave it to better people than you and me to figure out, their redemptiveness.
Yeah,
and it's hard. I don't think we'll ever figure it out. I don't think I'll have it all figured out before I die.
Well, and
I think it's just a part of our identity, and maybe that's just this continuing, growing, evolvingness that we, because gosh, we're going to do a little better in one area and do a whole lot worse in another.
Yeah. Well, I think that, when we're asking the questions, why do Christians seem so judgmental? I think the question each of us really needs to ask ourselves is like, do we truly want to become less judgmental? And I think that a lot of us would say yes without even thinking. But if I really stop and think about it, is like, do I want to be less judgmental of people? Like, do I really? Because I'm not really doing anything to work toward that.
Yeah.
And I struggle, like the people I'm judgmental of, I don't know how to break the cycle. I think that there's a part of me that enjoys it, who enjoys judging people.
Well, I think we kind of, as a people, like having a bad guy or gal, right? I'm imagining, and it's just, this thing I'm living in now with this buddy who just came out of prison is growing less judgmental based on a growing depth of a friendship. And hearing him acknowledge the very bad choices he made and taking, maybe the key in here somewhere is the phrase I was about to use, taking some responsibility and then working towards new behaviors. Mm-hmm. And then people would say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. So in similar settings, continuing to make a traction in those new decisions. And then at a certain point, I think it's just like a cliff. You just jump and go, I'm going to accept and acknowledge this person as a beloved child of God. I'm going to do, like lately, I'm about 84% less judgmental. Mm.
That's a lot.
I've come a long ways from like hang him to, and I think we have that. That would be a fun equation. That's what you and I should do. Mm-hmm. For over the weekend, let's catch ourselves in the minute we're judging and go, what would it take me to move the needle from, so next time you just see a big old hairy back jerk of a man, what would it take for you, like, I don't know. What do you think it would take? It's going to take more than knowing his name.
Yeah.
It would, like, if you went up and said, "Hi, I'm Alyssa. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I think you're an a-hole jerk."
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm playing with how you would even do that, right? But to catch ourselves assigning in the moment when our internal judgment meter goes off, oh, what was that just about? Mm-hmm. What just happened? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
That would be a cool experiment to try to.
I feel like we've covered pretty well that as Christians, we're judgmental.
Yeah, I think we've given them a hard time.
We're bad at it. Mm-hmm. And we've just been spewing judgments all over the place. And we need to do less of that.
Okay.
What would you say to the people who have been the recipients of judgment from the church? Either they've felt alienated or hurt by people who call themselves Christ followers through judgment. What message do you have for them? After we just did 45 minutes of how judgmental we are. Oh.
Well, I think that first, I guess I would want to say collective, like, I'm sorry for the company I work for, that somehow we have hurt or wounded you. And I know just from friendships I have with other people that happens when we do things or don't do things that give the message that either you're not accepted here, welcome here, you are less than. I was in a conversation the other night with a person who talked about being in another church, going through a divorce, and she just said it felt like it's almost overnight. Her friend group evaporated. There was not a place there for her. And having been divorced, I get that. People, it's almost as if church people think divorce is contagious. Mm-hmm. But people don't know how to live anymore how to reclaim old relationships after a divorce. And then when your church's overarching statement is all about, quote, the nuclear family and families, you don't hear there's just no language that you feel like you were included in that invitation. Mm-hmm. So that's wounding. When a person of the church has judged you, whether you just for whatever reason, you and I both know there's a whole laundry list menu of things that the church has deemed not Christ-like, unchristian, sin, whatever. And a pastor probably preached a sermon once that was condemning of something. And what that person heard is, I'm not welcome here. I'm less than. They don't want me to be around. Mm-hmm. And
I think a lot of times it's even just the off-the-cuff comments that are so hurtful, and people don't even realize they're saying it. And in such a, I think of a time, and I grew up in the church, so the church hasn't pushed me away yet. I'm mm-hmm. employed by the church as well, so y'all haven't pushed me out the door yet. I love the church. Like, I love that the church is full of broken people who are saying, I'm just going to try and I'm trying to do better. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be better, and I'm going to try and love better. I think that there's so much hope in that. Yeah. And so because I do see that side of things, I've had the privilege of getting to see that side of the church. That's why I haven't been pushed away, because I'm like, yeah, we're all broken. But sometimes the experiences I have, I'm like, if someone didn't have that mentality or hadn't gotten to see that, they'd be gone.
Oh, they'd be out the door.
Because there was one time that we were doing a group activity. It was like an event where we were doing an icebreaker game. And part of it was we had a deck of cards, and each table had a different deck of cards, and you put a card on your forehead, and then you try and find someone who has the matching card to you, and you share things about each other and blah, blah, blah. So we were all running around trying to find the person with a card on their forehead. And I made the comment of like, I haven't played a game like this since I was, playing drinking games in college, Mm-hmm. And a woman turned to me and said, "And you're proud of that?"
No way.
Yeah. And a person that I knew very well, who I had known for years mm-hmm. and years and years. And so I feel confident in myself and self-assured. And so I just said, no, I said, I mean, I don't know whether or not I'm proud of it, but it's a fact of my life. Mm-hmm. And then she just moved on. But I'm like, imagine if she had made that comment to somebody who it was their first night there, and they thought they were just making a joke.
Oh, they'd be destroyed, and they wouldn't come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many little moments like that I experience around the church of just people making like offhanded comments that I'm like, was that necessary?
Well, that, and I think a lot of times we leave people hanging, and by that I mean we say a lot by not saying anything. Mm. If either they have shared a vulnerability or...
Oh, you can be judgmental without saying a word.
Absolutely.
It's a vibe.
Uh-huh. And so the vibe I got from that church is I'm not welcome there.
Yeah.
And it could be, and you and I both know, kind of this, the system in a way. They could mm-hmm. come in a door, make their way through, get a cup of coffee, that they had no either eye-to-eye or person-to-person encounter, and make a story up in their head that that's not a friendly church. Mm.
Yeah.
And if they're not friendly, that means, well, I'm divorced. That must be why they're not,
Well, when we first moved here, and we were kind of trying to find what church worked for us. I remember, I was little, I was 9 years old, and we went to a church that we were sitting in the sanctuary, they were doing the service or whatever, and my mom sneezed. And the person behind us leaned forward. I thought he was going to say, "God bless you." But instead he started making fun of her and said, "That was the loudest sneeze I've ever heard. Like, that made me jump." And he thought he was being so funny. And my mom was like, "I don't want to go to church here." Like, if this is the way people are going to treat me when I sneeze. And we didn't go back. Like, we were like, that's not the church for us, because somebody was making fun of her sneeze in the worship service.
I probably was that guy, because like I could see where I thought I was being kind of humorous, and in my whole just, backward thinking would be, oh, that'd be a cute, funny thing to say to that lady, because I'm sure that was an embarrassing moment for her. And so, so often, either offhand, through humor, whatever, we make and say the little judgments that you think maybe way deep, there's more to it way down in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't say I blame people for deciding this isn't for me, when they experience that.
No, we got a guy right now, a good friend of mine, I guess, who is in a group I'm in, who was super wounded and came last Sunday and welcomed, sat down and participated in the 8:30 service. But being aware that he had a history of having been hurt by the church, I felt like I probably overcompensated on behalf of the church. And I need to talk to him and just say, was I as squirrely as I think I probably was? But I admire his, I don't know what it is, tenacity or courage or something to like, well, I'm going to give it a second chance.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't. Or when they do give a church a second chance, the next church is, screwed up as well.
Yeah. Well, we're all screwed up. Every church is screwed up
well,
to an
true.
extent.
Yeah. There's our little continuum, and we all function on it in different points, and some go right off the edge.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I have apologized on behalf of all Christians. On behalf of all Christians, past, present, and future, I apologize for our actions.
Here's my line is, I feel the need to apologize for the company I work for.
So let's end on a positive note,
okay,
shall we?
Yeah.
How does the concept of grace intersect with the issue of judgment, and how can we actively work towards extending grace to each other?
Well, there's all sorts of fancy words for grace. One of the ones, and it sounds kind of John Wesley-esque, that always comes to my mind is unmerited favor. Like there was nothing you did, there's nothing you can do for me to look at you and say, I care about you, you're a good person, you're a person of worth and value, and God says that, God agrees with me. I think we just have to somehow make that our unconscious, our conscious mantra. And that avoid the temptation, because over here too, there's like this really loud megaphone judging voice going on. But if we can be the counter voice to that, because we both know that we have been an excited recipient of that grace.
Oh, yeah.
And so why not share that? It's not like we're running out of grace. Nobody's, there's never going to be, the tap's not going to run dry. But we, man, that's just that real slippery slope that Christians go to about who and how do they decide who to extend grace to. Well, you don't get a choice. I don't think. It's not up to you to extend grace.
Yeah.
And that, no matter where the
because
person
we
is,
want everybody to extend grace to us.
Heck yeah.
Because we understand our circumstances and our, situation and all of the details. And if you only understood, you'd know why I did what I did.
What if we flipped the script a little bit and extended grace first, and then so that it was like I already gave it to you, I can't take it back, and now I get to know you even better. Versus, you don't have, you have to qualify for the grace I'm going to give you.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're going to be a recipient. Just standing here breathing, you're now qualified. Here it is.
Mm-hmm. We so often have to be reminded to extend grace. I think of even in my relationship with my partner every now and then, he's, if he's having a hard day, he'll say, Alyssa, could you just extend some grace to me tonight? Like, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why does my partner, the person that I love most in the world, have to ask me for that?
Mm-hmm.
He shouldn't have to ask me for that.
No, but that's pretty cool and healthy in Bell's relationship that you do. Like I sometimes would like to say that to Wendy.
But if he has to ask me for that, imagine all of the grace I'm not extending to the other people of the world.
I know, now you know better, you'll do better.
Well, I'll try.
Hey,
I always say, I hope trying counts.
I think
Sorry,
it does.
I interrupted you.
I think this has been a cool conversation.
You were mentioning Wendy extending grace.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So I'm so petty. I'm really super petty. I don't want to have to say to her, extend me grace. So I will just lord over her that she didn't, even though I didn't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my dysfunction. And then finally she'll say, is there something going on that I'm supposed to know about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she's more open and honest and perceptive than I am. But yeah, wouldn't that be something if we could begin to alter the DNA of the church and of all people just to love and accept and respect first and then begin to get to know deeper.
Yeah.
Man, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
It's been fun. Thanks
I'll work
for doing
on
this.
that. I'll work on the grace thing.
All right, I'm going to look for a guide group for you.
Thank you. The Life Plus God podcast is hosted, written, and produced by me, Alyssa Robinson, and sponsored by Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church in Flower Mound, Texas. Check out Trietsch online at tmumc.org or in person to see if this church is a right fit for you and your family. We'd love for you to visit us soon. And if you like the podcast, don't forget to subscribe and rate us on your podcast platform to help other people find our content. Join us next week and let's keep growing in relationship with Christ together.